Surprise, surprise, the Dallas Stars have yet another road matchup in the month of March. Tonight's opponent will be the Carolina Hurricanes. The Stars looking to grab a massive win and keep a hold of the Western Conference wildcard playoff spot that they currently possess. On today's show, I'll be joined by Jared Ellis of Locked on Hurricanes to talk all about tonight's game. It's all coming up on today's episode of Locked on Stars.
Your Locked on Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked on Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, credentialed member of the Dallas Stars media, coming to you on this Thursday, March 24th. Dallas Stars game day on the road, yet again taking on the Hurricanes in Carolina, a team that the Stars were familiar with, playing them 8 times last season, but back to normal this year. This will be the second of 2 meetings between these teams. The Stars winning the previous matchup back in late November. But before we jump into today's crossover episode, do want to take a moment and say thank you for stopping by today's episode of Locked on Stars. Whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you are watching on YouTube, or the follow button if you are listening on your favorite podcasting platform. We are free and available no matter where you listen or how you listen. But without any further hesitation, let's jump right into today's crossover episode between myself and Jared Ellis over at Locked on Hurricanes. Welcome in, everybody, Stars fans and Carolina Hurricanes fans. This is Dane Lewis, host of Locked on Stars, joined now by Jared Ellis, host of Locked on Hurricanes, here to talk about tonight's big matchup between the Stars and the Canes going down in Carolina. And it's been quite some time since these teams last met up. They last met up in Dallas a little bit after Thanksgiving, the Stars coming away with a 4-1 win in that matchup. But now the Hurricanes have revenge on their mind. And Jared, got to ask you, I know that, the trade deadline just happened Monday, and the Hurricanes made maybe not the biggest move, but still a pretty substantial move in getting Max Domi from Columbus. And what are kind of your thoughts on that trade? I'm sure you've been talking about it on your show as of late, but just kind of some insight for the Stars fans here listening. What are kind of your thoughts on this whole trade and how everything went down for Carolina on deadline day?
This was a trade where I'm still making up my mind on it, because we look at the trade itself. It was a 3-way deal between us, the Blue Jackets, and the Panthers. Obviously, we got Max Domi, and then Tyler Inamoto, I do apologize if I mispronounced that, from Florida. Columbus got, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, the guy we got in the draft from the Alex Nedeljkovic trade last year. He's heading up there to Columbus, and Florida is getting Igor Korshkov from us. Again, haven't really seen those names before, so I do apologize that I mispronounced them, because let's be honest, I definitely did. But yeah, so and with that, it's Columbus retained 50% of the salary. Florida took on a quarter of it, and then the Hurricanes, we took the final quarter of the salary. But this is when I'm unsure of how it's gonna go, because yes, he is a big-ish name, but hasn't had the greatest year this year so far. I'm not really sure just how he really improves the team. And honestly, I don't even know where he's going to fit in the lineup come game time, because it's not like anyone on the actual Hurricanes roster got moved to either Columbus or Florida. So you're going to have 2 healthy scratches, where it's kind of normally just been one as of late. I mean, Jordan Martinook's still out. So yeah, he'll slot in and only be the 1 scratch. But now we'll have 2 extra forwards whenever Martinook comes back. And I'm kind of wondering how that's going to go, because it's not even like you shipped a guy off for pick or future considerations, everyone's favorite guy. So I'm interested to see how this goes. He didn't play last night against Tampa Bay. He was in Raleigh, but he was just kind of there for media and whatnot. But he is slated to play in this game against the Stars. So it'll be interesting to see where he fits in the lineup. I'm very curious to see how this pans out.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself, kind of, looking at this Carolina team and where they've been over the past few weeks. And, they seem to be in pretty good shape, all things considered, sitting pretty in the standings. And I feel like kind of a not as much talked about team in the Eastern Conference, especially with Florida making the moves for Ben Sherratt and Claude Giroux, and Tampa Bay still, being a powerhouse looking for the three-peat. And even Toronto, even though they didn't make very many great moves at the deadline, I just feel like they always get talked about a ton. And so I feel like this Carolina team definitely gets overlooked. I'm curious to see where Domi gets placed in the lineup as well. I know that's something the Stars are probably going to try to game plan for, but also really have no idea how to game plan for that. And kind of talking about this Canes team over the past few weeks, I know that they had a little bit of a losing skid, I believe 4 games, but that was snapped on Tuesday night against the Lightning. What was the reason for that win, and what did the Canes do differently there that they hadn't been doing during that losing streak?
I would say with that game, it was really capitalizing on chances and special teams, because penalty kill was perfect on the night. I don't have the exact number in front of me right now, but they didn't allow any power play goals. It's the top penalty killing unit in the NHL for a reason. And the power play, it's finally stepped up. 2 of the goals that we scored in that game were power play goals. And that snapped a 6-game skid for the power play where they had been kept off the board. So special teams was really, really big in that game, as well as just capitalizing on chances that we were getting, because that had been an issue for us as of late. We weren't capitalizing on chances and generating them as well, but we were able to do that against Tampa Bay, despite Nikita Kucherov trying to start some stuff after the game. But
that sounds about right. I feel like that's a typical night for Tampa Bay. If they can't win, they have to, at least leave their mark wherever they play. So
they wanted to be a part of the storm surge.
Yeah.
I mean, benches cleared and everyone meeting at center ice, but they just want to be a part of the storm surge.
Yeah, it's a unique aspect of the home ice advantage for the Hurricanes, and they just don't get to see it that often. So they just wanted to be a part. But very, very interesting stuff from Nikita Kucherov, as always. And you continue to look deeper into this team, and Frederik Anderson, obviously a guy in the crease for the Canes this season, having a really big season. His best statistical year so far, from what I could find, a 2.06 goals against average and a 928 save percentage. What is he doing at age 32 that's kind of propelled him to this this almost next level kind of season that he's had?
I think it's a few things there with Freddie this year. Obviously, it's no secret when the deal was originally made back in the offseason, I was unsure about it. We all know just how upset I was that Alex Nedeljkovic was gone. I mean, before we even started this call, took a little picture with my phone or whatever, send to you, messing with you. And Alex Nedeljkovic is still the wallpaper on my computer. But I think what's helped him this year is, one, he is healthy. I think that's honestly probably the biggest thing, is he is healthy. He's not hurt anymore. So I think that's a big thing there. He's healthy. He has a really, really good team in front of him with a really, really good defense. Arguably one of, if not the best defense in the NHL is in front of him. So he wasn't really having that in Toronto. They're a very offensive minded team. They're built for the regular season, not the playoffs. Everyone's really talked about that, but that's helping him as well. And then honestly, just from a mental aspect, he's in Raleigh, North Carolina, not Toronto. So I feel that, like you said earlier, Hurricanes aren't really getting the type of coverage that other teams do. Toronto is arguably the biggest team in the NHL. They get some of, if not the most coverage of all the teams. So you have that spotlight on you. That's never going to help. It was very much the same way with Jake Gardner whenever he came down here. He's obviously out this season with injury and all that stuff, but that was something that helped him as well. It's just you don't have that big spotlight on you anymore.
Yeah, and I think the cool part about some of these teams, like in the southern part of North America that are emerging, whether it is Florida, Tampa Bay, or Carolina, or even, Dallas in the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years ago, it's really unique to see because, I mean, this is a league that, started up north in Toronto, one of the original teams, as well as Boston, New York, Chicago. But, I just think a team like Carolina has been, up and coming for so long and kind of, just under the radar, a smaller market team. And I feel like Sebastian Aho is also just like a perfect fit there. I think if you plug him into one of these bigger market teams that he's talked about a lot more, but he really just isn't. I feel like I just don't personally hear a lot about him. I also live in Texas, so I mean, there's no surprise there. But even at the national level, he's having a really, really good season. And maybe on pace to, break his points record at 83 back in the 2018-2019 season. Do you think he's able to crack that number?
I definitely do, barring any kind of injury or anything like that. I definitely think he can. I predicted heading into this season that we would see the return of all-star Sebastian Aho. We hadn't seen it, the past 2 seasons because of, bubble and, COVID and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I predicted that he'd go to his second all-star game this year, and I was right. I fully expected him to just take that next step. Prior to the season, he was awarded, an A to put on the front of his jersey, and he's really taking that next step, one as a leader for the team, and then also on the ice. The guy is absolutely killing it there, and it's not one of those things of, oh, you signed your big money contract and now you're just going to phone it in like we see so many other professional athletes do across sports. Not that case with him. He got his nice deal, a couple years ago, because of that whole offer sheet situation, and he has continued to get better and better every single year.
Yeah, he's certainly a fun guy to watch. I don't get to see too much of him just living in a different area of the country, but whenever I do get to watch him, he's just an absolute delight. And even, he'll be competing against the Stars in tonight's game. I'm sure there'll be some moments where I maybe drop my jaw a little bit, but we're going to take a quick break and continue to talk about the Stars-Canes matchup after a quick thank you to one of our sponsors. And today's sponsor is betonline.net. It's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. Jared, do you have a team that you're kind of pulling for to win the March Madness tournament?
Yeah, I'm obviously in Raleigh, North Carolina. College basketball is basically a religion in this state. So whether it's UNC, Chapel Hill, Duke, Wake Forest, NC State, everyone is constantly watching college basketball. Here it's on every single TV across the state, whether it's at home, a bar, a restaurant, a school, whatever, it's always on. And me personally, I picked Duke this year. NC State isn't in the tournament this year, so I went with Duke. I want Coach K to go out on top.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I grew up in Lubbock where Texas Tech is, and I know that's the next matchup in the Sweet 16 is Texas Tech Duke, and so really excited for that matchup. I know that team, Blue Devils team, is going to be fired up for Coach K, but Texas Tech also certainly looking to play villain. But BetOnline is the best place to go if you plan on making any bets for the March Madness tournament. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline.net, where the game starts. Jumping back into today's crossover episode between Locked On Stars and Locked On Hurricanes, Dane Lewis and Jared Ellis. Now flipping the script. Jared, the floor is yours, my friend. I'm here to answer any questions you have about the Stars team going into tonight's matchup.
Yeah, so very much akin to what you said about the Hurricanes. For you, I don't really get to see a whole lot of the Stars. It's really only whenever we tend to play each other. So I know we were kind of speculating a while back whether or not the Hurricanes and Stars would make a trade at the trade deadline for one John Klingberg. There was a lot of speculation on that, really going back to the offseason. It wasn't just at the deadline or leading up to it, but that didn't happen. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think when you boil it down, it really just has to do with the fact that Miro Heiskanen is on not long-term IR, but on IR right now with mononucleosis. I mean, he's the best defenseman on the team. John Klingberg, easily the second best. And so, you give up John Klingberg while not having Miro Heiskanen, and that just leaves the defensive core in absolute shambles. And, that's not to say that I don't think we could have gotten a decent return for Klingberg, because he's really picked up his play as of the last few weeks with the absence of Miro Heiskanen. And so it's just one of those things that the timing just wasn't there. I imagine once Heiskanen was gone, that the front office was probably, shutting down any offers that got sent their way. And yeah, it's kind of an anticlimactic ending, I guess, for both sides, and makes me a little bit nervous going into the offseason, because assuming that the Stars and Klingberg don't get something worked out, he could potentially just walk, and the Stars could get nothing for a guy that's been one of the better offensive defensemen in the league for the past several years.
Yeah, and you actually just speak of offense, flipping the script over to your forwards. Joe Pavelski, he's having an awesome year at age 37. What is clicking for him this year? Obviously, he's never been a bad player or anything like that, but you see guys get up there in age like he does, they tend to peter off a little bit, but he's showing no signs of slowing down this year and having an amazing year. But like I said, what is it that's clicking for him this year?
Yeah, I think part of it is getting paired on the top line with Roope Hintz and Jason Robertson, who are two young, up and coming potential future all-stars. And, the sky's the limit with both those players. And so, you mix Pavelski's like veteran instinct and his, hard work and his dedication to his craft, and then the speed and the agility and athleticism of Robertson and Hintz. I think that plays a factor. And then I tell people all the time, I mean, you look at other members of Stars media that are at morning skate or even just normal Stars practice, and they always say the first guy out on the ice is Joe Pavelski, and he's in front of the net working on deflections, rebounds, you name it. And so, I mean, he's the first guy out on the ice at practice, and he takes care of himself. But also, even though he's a veteran in this league and no one would bat an eye or think otherwise if he wanted to take a day off, he just simply does it. I think he finally missed a morning skate on Tuesday on game day. The Stars played the Oilers that night, but then he played the game. He scored a goal. I think he ended up having an assist as well. And if I'm not mistaken, that was like the first practice that he just decided to take a break. And again, I don't think anyone judges him for that, because like you said, he is 37 years old. So I think it's just a mixture of all those things. He continues to want to get better and continues to find ways to improve his game despite his age, and also is playing along a Calder Trophy finalist and one of the best skaters in the NHL in Roope Hintz.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy to see him just, again, 37 years old and just having a career year. It's crazy to think about. Very Tom Brady-esque of just not slowing down, really. Yeah. I know a lot of people are probably going to hate that comment, though.
Not as many rings as Tom Brady, but the same energy for sure.
yeah, that's it. And you talk about him being first out on the ice, last off. Very reminiscent of someone much younger than him in Andrei Svechnikov. He is always one of, if not the first guy out on practice, and then one of, if not the last off as well. And then there's been many times where after a game and after he gets changed out of his uniform, he's right back out there on the ice practicing, whether it's a win or a loss. And just the same energy there of like never settling. And it's great to see that, both of these guys, at complete opposite ends of their career. Pavelski, probably in the next 3, maybe 4 years, he's calling it. Andre, he's got decade plus left for him, but them both having that same energy of not ever settling. That's great to see. But you mentioned your top line of just how good that is. What do we need to do to really stifle that top line?
Yeah, I think what it's going to come down to, and what I think the Edmonton Oilers fell victim to, is really the speed of especially Rope Hintz and Jason Robertson. I mean, they're just so quick and they're so smart with their movement, even when they don't have the puck. Especially Jason Robertson. If you could just, make a highlight reel of him alone without the puck, of just knowing where to be whenever his teammates are moving or passing the puck around. And then I think also that top line is playing a lot better when John Klingberg's on the ice as of late. So then you throw out a fourth guy that you have to be on the lookout for. And I mean, it's just a dangerous, minute or minute and a half with that top line out there. So that's really what it's going to come down to, is have some really fast defensemen out there that can either contain or at least, get the stick in the way of passes, and don't give a guy an opportunity to be open. You may see a guy like Robertson or Rupe move away from the play, and the defensemen or even the forwards that might possibly be on them need to be mindful of that and not ignore that, but also, keep an eye on them, because they can get by you in the blink of an eye. And next thing you know, the puck's in the back of the net, and you're up looking at the screen trying to figure out what happened, because things can move quickly. And even Pavelski, not quite the speediest guy with the skates, but can make really quick moves with the stick, or, catch a deflection or something like that, because that's normally what he's working on when he's out on, the ice early for morning skate, is deflections in front of the net.
Yeah, that's definitely something I was thinking about, just not abandoning your guy. Because the Hurricanes, they obviously play really tight coverage, really tight man-to-man defense, and really just smother you. But I remember I believe we were playing Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. Everyone just kind of got off to one side of the ice for the puck. Sidney Crosby was just completely open. Tony DeAngelo had just kind of left him abandoned. And what do you know? Sidney Crosby does Sidney Crosby things and scores. But one final question is, I've seen a lot of Hurricanes fans, talking about, excited to see Tyler Seguin tomorrow night. So what kind of year is he having, for those that haven't been keeping up with the Stars?
Yeah, it's a weird year for Tyler Seguin. He started off really slow, but ever since the All-Star break, he's really picked up his game. He's fourth on the team in points with 37. He actually just scored career goal number 300 on Tuesday against Edmonton. He'd been on the 300 watch for like a week and a half, and it was starting to just become a dead horse here on our show, because it seemed like only a matter of time, because he's really picked up his game as of late. And I think being paired on a line with Jamie Benn, of course, I mean, they've been playing together for years, but then they've recently added Dennis Gurianov to that second line. And I think that he's really built good chemistry with him. And I think that's been a big booster for his game in the second half of the season. So he's definitely a guy you'll have to be on the lookout for. I think if you're, a fan of another team, or just kind of a fan of the NHL, and you take a quick look at the Stars, you see the top line, and you kind of maybe think that the rest of the team isn't quite as much of a threat, but Tyler Seguin can, sometimes he might not have any points, but he's also a guy that can still, at this point in his career, easily go for, a 2 or 3 point night. I don't know if that's what we'll get in Carolina, because I know the defense is going to be hard to beat, but he's definitely a guy that still has a little bit of his edge that he had earlier in his career.
Yeah, it's definitely one I'm looking forward to seeing, because like you said, he's really picked it up post All-Star break. But we will get into our predictions for tonight's game right after this quick break. Now we are back with myself, Jared Ellis from Locked On Hurricanes, and Dane Lewis from Locked On Dallas Stars. Now, we've asked each other our questions, regarding each other's teams, but now time is up. What are our predictions for tonight? I am thinking it will probably be a very, very physical game with the way Dallas plays, the way we play. I think it's going to be really physical, and we're going to knock the crap out of each other. And I think we will see some really good goaltending as well. I'm really not sure in terms of a final score. If I remember correctly, the last time we predicted that, we were predicting a low scoring effort, and it was very much not. So I'm predicting, maybe a 5-goal total between two teams. I will definitely go with the Hurricanes for the win tonight, but it's not going to be an easy win. I think they'll probably only win by 1 goal, maybe 2, with that second goal being an empty netter.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. And the Stars have found themselves in a lot of physical matchups as of late. They played a game in DC on Sunday that started out fairly normal, and then the checks just kept coming and coming, and people were getting tossed in the penalty box left and right for roughing. And so certainly could be expecting that. And I know last season that's kind of how it was for these teams also when they played
Mhm.
8 times with the division realignment. I'm sure that there's still a little bit of maybe some animosity there between some of the players still on the roster. And
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I know last time I think we predicted low scoring, and the Stars came out and scored 4 goals against Anderson, and what was at the time probably still the best PK in the league, which was just shocking. But they were also in the middle of a 7-game win streak at that time. That's probably the best we've seen the Stars play this season. So yeah, I'll agree. I think maybe 4 or 5 goals total. I typically am not always confident about the Stars on the road, but they only have 4 home games in the month of March, and they only have 1 left, and it'll be over the weekend after this game in Carolina. So they've almost kind of just had to build the habit of being on the road this month of March, and they've done pretty well, all things considered. And so I think that that won't be a huge factor in this matchup, being away from home, even though Carolina does have that good home ice advantage. We talk about the fan base there and how passionate they are. But if anything, I think that'll just feed into the excitement of the game. And especially a lot of the veteran guys will be able to use that as motivation. So I'll throw out maybe the same score, maybe a 3-2 final. Stars, I think, can get the win, and maybe an overtime, and even an overtime loss. If the Stars can come out of this game with at least a point, I think that's a success. But again, great goaltending. I think we're in store for that, with Jake Oettinger playing as well as he is for the Stars. And of course, we've been talking about Frederik Anderson all show. And I know you mentioned you think Max Domi will be playing. As far as the Stars, I know that they did get Vlad Domestikov from Detroit. Not sure what the verdict is at this time, if he's playing or not. But that's something to definitely be on the lookout for as game time approaches, whether or not he's in the lineup. But yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting storyline to follow for sure.
Yeah, it will be definitely. And you did mention the division realignment from last year of the animosity carrying over. I will say, for me, before we go, it definitely has, especially in our games against Nashville. It very much carried over for sure. And as well as with Florida and Tampa. But yeah, it's going to be a really tough physical game, because these teams, there's definitely been some turnover for both sides.
Mm-hmm.
But as a whole, these teams know each other well still. And those guys that were playing against each other last year with all that stuff there, they remember all those things that were said on the ice. I remember Jordan Stahl and Jamie Benn, them really going at it last year. And if I remember correctly, earlier this year as well. So wouldn't surprise me if we see that carry over into this game as well.
Yeah, Jamie Benn's certainly not a stranger to controversy or trash talk, fighting, whatever it is. That's definitely been kind of his MO this season, whenever he's not scoring goals or getting assists. So yeah, it's very, very excited to watch this game unfold. And Jared, if you want to take a second and kind of throw out where Stars fans can maybe find more information on you and the show in case they want more insight on this Carolina team.
Yeah, they can find the show on Twitter and Instagram at LO_Hurricanes. Myself on Twitter at Jared Ellis _96. And it's going to be on free and available on whatever streaming platform you are using on, as well as on YouTube.
That's right. Yeah, all the Locked On shows getting on YouTube, if they're not already, really, really soon. And for any Hurricanes fans looking for more Dallas Stars insight, you can find our show also on your favorite podcasting platform, as well as on YouTube. And I am on Twitter at Dane_Lewis, and our show just as simple at Locked On Stars. But Jared, thank you so much for crossing over. I guess this is the last time our teams will meet up, unless we see a Stanley Cup matchup between these teams, which seems a little bit more likely for the Hurricanes. The Stars still very much on the fence in the Western Conference playoff race, but crazier things have certainly happened before in professional sports.
Yes, very much so. But it's good talking to you, Dane, and I will talk to you probably later on tonight after the game.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure we'll be in touch. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed today's crossover episode between Jared and myself. This is a big game for both teams. The Hurricanes are looking to build all the momentum that they can going into the postseason, and the Stars, of course, looking to stay in a playoff spot and stay in the playoff hunt. This is getting very, very competitive. The Pacific Division teams seem to be shuffling around every single day, and they're in contention with them, as well as teams like Winnipeg, who are still very much alive and in the hunt for a playoff spot. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for a full breakdown and reaction of the Stars-Canes matchup. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you are watching today's show on YouTube, or the follow button on your favorite podcasting platform. We are free and available no matter where you listen or how you listen. Thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Dane_Lewis, and of course our show on Twitter at Locked On Stars. Getting very, very close to 700 followers over at the Locked On Stars Twitter page. So be sure to join the movement before we really blow up and get going. But that's going to do it for me, Stars fans. Enjoy the game tonight. We will see you back here tomorrow.